On a cold, snowy January morning in 2022, Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found lifeless in the front yard of a fellow Boston police officer. His body, battered and bruised, lay just outside the house where his girlfriend Karen Reed claimed she dropped him off the night before. Now, years later, the courtroom is packed, the nation's eyes locked on the unfolding drama of Karen Reed's retrial of the century. The prosecution says she ran him over with her SUV and left him in the snow and never looked back. The defense, however, tells a far darker tale of a cover-up involving law enforcement, planted evidence, and a powerful blue wall. Social media has become a battleground with viral videos, heated protests, and TikTok sleuths igniting a public obsession. Every witness, every cross-examination adds fuel to the fire. Was this a tragic accident, a calculated murder, or a twisted conspiracy? As Karen Reed stands trial again, the search for the truth continues in Dedham, Massachusetts. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. Another big day in Dedham, Massachusetts in the Karen Reed retrial of the century. You know, under our Constitution, everyone has the right to remain silent, right? You take the Fifth. You don't have to say anything. You cannot be compelled to testify. You cannot be compelled to provide incriminating evidence against yourself, okay? You can be subpoenaed if you're a witness, but if you have been charged by the government of a crime, you don't have to say a word, ever. Guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States. Now, the Constitution also provides the freedom of speech. They can't stop you from talking. You have the right to remain silent if you are accused, but you also have a First Amendment right to speak your mind. And they can't take that away from you. And think about both of those concepts where the government can't shut you up and they can't make you speak at the same time. Two constitutional rights. And guess what? Karen Reed has exercised both of them. During her first trial, she never took the stand, never testified. She never sat down for an interrogation in this case. She has exercised her right to remain silent about what happened that night in the investigation and inside the courtroom during the trial. But at the same time, she has exercised her right to speak, and we've seen her speak to our own Matt Johnson outside of the courthouse, and we've seen her also sit down and do interviews with Dateline, with 2020, and with others. And those interviews were broadcast, and guess what? The prosecutor got his hands on all of these interviews, and now he is attempting to use her words against her, trying to use bits and pieces of what she said during the course of different interviews and bring it inside the courtroom for the jury to consume, for the jury to hear, in statements that he believes makes her look not great, may make her seem somewhat unlikable to some, and may reveal some evidence that he couldn't otherwise reveal. So the prosecutor, when Karen Reed exercised her freedom of speech, now using those words against her, or attempting to, inside the courtroom in this trial, and that is a big change from the first time around in the Karen Reed case. So, right now, let's go to the courthouse. Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson joins us live from outside that beautiful courthouse in lovely Dedham, Massachusetts. Matt, great to see you. It was really another emotional day today when John O'Keefe's friend took the stand. It was such a real moment.
Yeah, you know, this is just another real person that's impacted by the tragedy that took place here in this small town that's divided this community. You have Michael Camerano, who's a longtime friend of the victim, John O'Keefe. The two had been hanging out at John's house. They had a couple drinks, all while he's text messaging Karen Reed throughout the day. John is, you know, because they had a fight earlier in the day, which we'll get into. But he really establishes their relationship, what he may have known, what he didn't know. And he talks about running into Karen Reed after the two decided to go to the waterfall. And this was the interaction that he saw.
But you do remember when Karen arrived, there was an affectionate greeting between John and Karen, right?
Yes.
You saw them kiss, right?
Yes.
You saw John put his arm around Karen?
Correct.
And you saw that Karen sort of nestled into his embrace?
Correct.
And when she did that, that's when he kissed her, correct?
Yes.
And they seemed happy to see each other, did they not?
They did.
That night they were affectionate?
Yes.
Laughing?
Yes.
Happy?
Yes.
Like a normal couple?
Yes.
No arguments?
No.
You witnessed no bickering, no tension, correct?
No.
Do you know what was going on behind closed doors other than what you saw?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No.
Do you know whether or not John was trying to end the relationship with Miss Reed?
Objection.
Do you know that, sir?
No.
Next question.
Do you know if there was any jealousy in that relationship?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I mean, Karen wouldn't let, they did everything together, a lot of things together, and I thought at times, yeah, you could see, you know, she didn't want other women around John.
I was right behind the O'Keefe family during this testimony, so I have a clear shot of view of the jury because they sit directly across the way. And none of the jurors were taking notes during that part of his testimony. A couple of the women in the jury were leaning forward to hear him when he was talking about the jealousy or answering that part of the question.
You know, it was interesting because he was someone who's obviously very close to John O'Keefe, and the way he testified throughout, you could really feel that. And I thought that was important because, once again, the jury can't get lost in the sauce. They have to understand what they are deciding is how a man who was loved and beloved was killed, and who was responsible, and was it Karen Reed? Now, you said, you talked about that fight. I thought what the prosecution did today was pretty effective in the way they sort of laid out all of the communications between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed during the course of the day.
Yeah, after this friend took the stand, then it was reading and a PowerPoint of key text messages throughout the day. There must have been dozens of text messages between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. She had left his home. Allegedly, there was a fight at the start of their day, and she was referencing that in a lot of the text messages. And prosecutors were really pointing out that this was revving up into a bigger argument, and really that there were underlying problems in their relationship, according to prosecutors. And then the relationship, there was this exchange where Karen Reed says this. Let's put it on your screen. Tell me if you're interested in somebody else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. John replies, nope. And then he also says, things haven't been great between us for quite a while. Ever consider that? This was another moment where this jury was just leaning back and taking it all in. I didn't see anyone take any notes. This was quite a lengthy process of Trooper Garino reading through all of the data from the cell phones and the text messages at this point in time. But you have to think that this jury is educated enough to know that they'll get it in the back room with them. They weren't taking the notes, but they were really just taking it all in, Vinny.
Yeah, I think that's important because the way it was presented, you got a feeling for what was going on that day. You know, not one specific message, but the series and the content of the messages, the timing of the messages, the phone calls that were interspersed, the phone calls that were not answered, and how many times the calls were made again and again and again, and the calls were rejected. All of that, I think, painted a single picture. So I think that's the way to take in that testimony. I'm glad the jury did it that way. I think it's much more important. Now, one of the things we've been doing, Matt, since the beginning here, this is a retrial, right? You were there day in and day out for the first time around. So there are some differences. And I think one big difference people are starting to notice in this case is these clips of Karen Read interviews that I mentioned off the top that the prosecution is playing.
Yeah, you know, she's done a lot of sit-down interviews with various outlets that you outlined in your open, and that's been since the first trial. And, you know, any statement outside of court, if you're on trial for murder, can be used against you. And this prosecutor, Hank Brennan, is introducing them, and he has since the very beginning. There was a clip that was played in opening statements, and he's really sticking to that format. There's no outline or explanation to the jury when he plays them, but it feels very different than what you get at home. And I know that you've been in that courtroom here behind me because it is a tight and it's a small courtroom. When the prosecutor or Alan Jackson speak, it's very loud. It may not come across that way on your TV. And then when they play these clips, so they've installed these huge monitors on both sides of the courtroom, and they dim the lights, and they have curtains now for this trial, so they close the curtains, and they play these clips, and they're very loud. And Hank Brennan, again, doesn't establish where they're coming from, but there's a slate, and then they're played for this jury, and the jury really focuses on that and takes it all in. Karen Read, you know, we tried asking her about these clips because this is what's really separating trial 1 from trial 2. After court ended today, she really didn't have much to say. Take a listen. Karen, how do you think that the jury is taking those clips of you?
Do you still stand by doing all the interviews?
Do you regret how you spoke about Ms. O'Keefe?
All right, not answering any questions. This is the first day since leading up to this trial, and the first day of the trial, we're only in day 3, that she hasn't given some sort of a comment. But earlier this week, we were asking her about those clips because he played one in opening statements, Hank Brennan, the special prosecutor, and she said that she had no regrets. Everything that she said is true, and she would stick by it and say it again. But nothing today on the courthouse steps, Vinnie.
Yeah, and amazing the way they're being presented. Like the picture you paint, very dramatic. Let's draw the curtains, let's dim the lights, and everyone's watching. Yet they're unprompted. They just happen. They just appear. It's almost like a commercial break in between witnesses. Now a word from our sponsor, and they go to Karen Read. This is way different. Matt Johnson, great job as always. Thank you so much in Dedham, Massachusetts tonight. All right. It's strange. Let's bring in our think tank joining us tonight. Criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy, retired criminal defense attorney. Doesn't he look relaxed, right? Much more relaxed than back in the day. Kirk Nurmi is with us, and former federal prosecutor, president of the West Coast Trial Attorneys. Here he is, Nima Rahmani. Great to see everyone tonight. Okay, so just to paint the picture, how these clips are being played, like a witness. They finish with a witness, and then all of a sudden, Hank Brennan says, now let's take a look at a clip. And they draw the curtains, they dim the lights, and they take a look at these clips. So let's take a look at one of them.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
So far, they've played 10 of these clips. It's unreal. Eklund, let's start with this one. You know, what do you think? Is this? because they're just little bits and pieces. It's almost like you're scrolling on your phone, right, through Instagram or something, or TikTok, and a video pops up, you watch it for 7 seconds, and then it's gone. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he is shooting himself in the foot, because with every clip, right, the defense then has the opportunity to play the entirety of the interview. And if you've heard her interviews before, that particular clip is her trying to rationalize whether she did it or not. So the prosecutor chopping and screwing her interviews, and as you can see, like different clothes, different interviews, yes, it is dramatic. However, the defense, all they have to do is play a whole interview out, and it then just confirms what they're saying that law enforcement did in the case, chopping and screwing things together to fit a narrative. So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot.
So you're saying you believe the defense is going to be able to play the entire interviews, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, Kirk, have you ever seen this done before? Unprompted little clips, little intermezzos, little palate cleansers in between witnesses, played of the defendant speaking?
Well, Vinny, I'm looking so relaxed these days because I don't have to deal with the client going on TV and giving interviews and having clips like this to feed to the prosecution. I would disagree with Eklund. I think it is Miss Reed who's shooting herself in the foot. The presentation style, as you mentioned, is interesting. These little breadcrumbs, right? It's almost like leaving a trail. And I think, the Commonwealth is ultimately leaving a trail, hoping that these clips are going to force Miss Reed onto the stand. I think that's the method behind the madness, because otherwise it would make way more sense to lay foundation through some of the people that conducted these interviews and lay them out to the jury as a grand finale with some of the admissions she makes, some of the things she talks about. So to me, this is a way to get her up on the stand. I don't know why the defense team would permit these interviews. I know they can advise, they can't control. I don't know if there's some method to the madness, but I think ultimately this could lead Miss Reed to the witness stand.
All right, let's take a look at another one of the clips that was played. As I said, there's 10 of them. We're going to show them to you this hour. Let's take a look.
I remember it, but I question, do I remember it because it's been relived so much? I mean, when I see the video of me driving from the waterfall, like what I just described, tapping the brakes when I crossed the intersection, Washington over Sherman Street, do I actually remember that I kind of slowly proceeded through that green light? No, I don't actually remember that. But I've seen the video so many times that you then question, did I remember on my own? Or was my memory jogged? But I also wondered, did I say, could I have hit him? Or was it told to me that I said I hit him? And I knew I never could have said that, so the closest I must have said was, did I hit him? I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement's claiming I said it?
All right, Nima, that was, of all the clips, that's the one I didn't quite understand why prosecutors played it, what they're trying to prove or show the jury with this one. What are your thoughts about that particular clip?
Well, what we're seeing, Vinny, is a very different prosecution strategy here. Obviously, we have a new prosecutor for this retrial, and from the opening statement, they've been focusing on Karen Reed's own words that, I hit him, or did I hit him? And I understand why they're doing it, because that's the strongest evidence in the case. And we have seen this, Vinny. We saw this recently with the Bob Durst case, right, where portions of that documentary were played and ultimately resulted
I couldn't sit and watch that whole trial. The opening statement was a week, Nima. I couldn't watch that whole thing.
But this is the TV era, and I understand why the defense is doing this. Not for the courtroom, but the court of public opinion. This is a team from LA. They know how to manipulate the media, and Karen Reed probably has more fans than any accused murderer, maybe outside of Luigi Mangione. So they've done a masterful job with respect to the PR side of the case. And I think she has a lot of support, and it's potentially helping the case. I think the challenge for the prosecution, though, you're playing all these clips, and I agree with Kirk and Eklund, is that really, you got to kind of pick a lane. Was this an accident? Was this manslaughter? Are these admissions by Karen Read that she may have killed John O'Keefe on accident? Are you going down this different rabbit hole and you're talking about jealousy and a toxic relationship and something intentional? I think they've overcharged this case, and I think they need to really make a decision here. Is this a murder case, something done intentionally, or was this an accident because she was under the influence and was this manslaughter?
Yeah, that's been the biggest mystery, but we know the first jury, according to the ones who came forward, the first jury did not believe it was murder, but they didn't know how to fill out the juror slip, so that became a problem for them. Eklund, do you think she comes across as unlikable in the clips we've seen so far?
I think she comes across as Boston. I think she's straight up. She is straight up Boston, and I believe that it's a Boston relationship. I believe it was a Boston fight. I believe they were going to Boston make
Well,
up.
we've got Boston area jurors, so will they accept her as one of their own?
And that is why jury selection is so important. I think that if you aren't, in those young relationships, like, are you telling me that the default is to have every day beaming with flowers and glitter and love with your significant other? If that was the case, then we would have no divorce. Like, come on. You're going to
That's
have
life
fights.
with the normies. Come on.
You're going to have fights. You're going to have issues. You're going to make up. You're going to ask questions. You're going to not pick up the phone. Like, that's a relationship. They had a Boston relationship.
I like the way you put that, Eklund. All right, good news. Our think tank is staying with us for the whole hour. When we come back, more of these clips. There's 10 of them. You will see them all. Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. Her alleged killer, her mother's ex, was in court trying to get evidence tossed from his case. Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
You told police you shot him twice in the head.
I could have killed everybody in that building, and I didn't.
You think you should get some kind of credit for not killing people?
Interview with a Killer. New episode, Sunday at 8 on Court TV.
How do you feel about Hank Brennan planning to use your interviews in his opening statement?
Come at me.
That's what your dad
I like your dad. I may have seen it. I would not have said anything that I wouldn't say again.
That was 2 days ago, where Karen Read was very clear. Matt Johnson talked about this. Very clear that no regrets about any of the interviews that she gave. Well, all those interviews, the prosecution gathered them up and then is cutting up little pieces of those interviews and feeding them to the jury between witnesses. I've never seen anything like it before. I don't think they did exactly like this in Durst, but they did show a lot of his clips. Okay, so let's do this. Our think tank is still here. I want to bring them in right now because this next one is a short clip. Still with us, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, Nima Romani. Okay, I want you guys to watch this. This is a short clip, but this is probably the one that got the most feedback from people, especially online, social media. Here she is. This is Karen Read talking about John O'Keefe's mother.
And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, I think he looks like he got hit by a car. He looks like he got hit by a car.
That's not great. That is not a great moment. Peggy O'Keefe testified. The jury got to meet her. She was extremely emotional. They know that she's lost 2 children and a son-in-law. They know that she is now raising her grandchildren because her daughter died, her daughter's husband died, and then her son, who was raising the kids, also died. And that's Karen Read kind of doing an impression of Peggy O'Keefe. Kirk, 0 to 10, how bad is that for Karen Read?
I would say that's a 9.5. I mean, it's not a confession, but it's pretty darn bad. It's certainly not a good look. When we talk about likability or credibility, if she does take the stand, that kind of look, that kind of indifference to the loss of, maybe some people might see it as an indifference to the loss of John, mocking his mother. Yeah, so it's certainly not a good look at all.
Now, Nima, before I show you the next clip, she's talking about an interaction. This is like the wounds are fresh, right? Everyone's just back from the hospital, and she goes over to the house with her father and her brother, and she says that she's being confronted by Peggy O'Keefe, John's mother. John's mother says this never happened. So let's take a look at a 2020 interview where she's talking about this same moment.
They had pulled into the driveway before me, so I was presuming she saw my cracked tail light and was thinking, did you hit my son? I could sense from her that she was looking at me very warily. And then when John's nephew came home, I just wanted to see him and squeeze him. It was quite uncomfortable. I said, Dad, come upstairs to the master bedroom. I said, I think I need to leave. I said, I think John's mother thinks I did something to John.
So, Nima, part of the point that she is making in these interviews is that John's mother is blaming her right out of the box, like the first time she sees her, and she says she feels uncomfortable, like she's being blamed, and she gathers up, I guess, what other stuff, grabs her car, her brother, and her father take off and leave. But what do you think about the impact of seeing her tell this story in light of the fact that the jury heard from Peggy O'Keefe?
Well, Peggy O'Keefe is very important, Vinny, and we're talking about the difference between the first trial and the retrial. And she didn't testify in the first trial. And she was a very powerful witness yesterday. She was so powerful that when she testified, the defense got up there and they didn't ask her any questions, and they just expressed condolences for her loss. So I thought she was a very effective witness for the prosecution. And like Kirk said, the last thing you want is the defendant mocking a mother who lost her son.
Eklund, is there any way to explain this to the jury, that she's being accused by the mother of her boyfriend of doing something that she did not do? Do you explain this? How do you give context to these pieces that the jury is seeing?
Anybody who's ever been a girlfriend and who's had their significant other's mom come at them crazy for something that they didn't do, it is unreasonable the amount of venom sometimes parents can have just on mundane things, let alone the time in which her own son is no longer with us. Karen Reed's defense is stating that the police, law enforcement is covering it up. So with that being said, we have law enforcement, according to Karen Reed's defense, law enforcement has been putting it on her from the beginning. And if they can turn his mom against her, then they've won. So when you are Karen Reed and you know that the mother of your boyfriend is actively blaming you for the death of her son, that is etched in your mind. You're going to have a visceral reaction. She is literally showing you what she got. And grief is different. Losing a child, nobody can explain that. But what you see is she's been consistent. That woman did something that has imprinted on her. That's why she said it. She could have kept it off of the interview. She didn't have to mention it. But she's showing you that, hey, I'm literally losing my boyfriend and his mother is coming at me, telling me that I'm the one who did it.
Now,
that's something that you don't come out from.
I want to play one more clip. This is from another interview. It's just audio. This is Karen Reed talking about the moment when her Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Roberts come to the house to drop off the SUV and then all get into one vehicle and then go back to 34 Fairview to look for John. And here she is talking about the tail light.
When my car was seized, there was a few small pieces of taillight missing that I had picked out at John's at 5:45 before we drove over to Fairview. I'm showing Jim and Kerry, look what I just did to my light, and I'm worried that there's gonna be some kind of electric short circuit. There's like the bulb is showing and some of the red plastic's missing. So I picked pieces out of the light housing that had kind of collapsed within the light and dropped them in John's driveway.
All right, Kirk, she's saying there that she picked a few pieces out of that tail light, and this is before police get it and before they go back and find John, and she dropped them on the driveway. Those pieces have never been found, Kirk.
Yeah, but this is, not to sound, this is a small piece of that puzzle, right? Because we have so many other things. We have the video that you're showing there of the hitting the car. We have the Sally Port video. There's going to be so much evidence, I think, that's going to overwhelm some of her statements. Did I hit him? About the taillight and everything else. That scientific evidence is probably going to hold a lot more sway than what Miss Reed is saying in some of these clips anyway.
All right, Think Tank staying with us. When we come back, I've got more clips, and it's all about Karen Reed drinking. That is next.
When you walked out of the bar, how many drinks had you had?
I had probably about 4, and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
And 4 drinks you felt fine to drive?
Yep.
All right, Karen Reed, in that clip that was shown to the jury, saying, I had about 4 drinks, I was fine to drive. Now, what the prosecution did is they played a series of 5 clips all together, one after the other at the end of the day. So we're going to play 4 more clips for you now, one after the other. And all of them have to do with Karen Reed and drinking, Karen Reed drinking and driving. Take a look.
And is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's
because you'd had a lot to drink, right?
I wouldn't say I had like a normal amount. Like a vodka tonic every 40 minutes.
Okay. And so are you feeling like buzzed? And I'm not judging, I'm just trying to get a sense.
Buzzed. The final count of my alcohol intakes, probably about 5 or 6 or 4. The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. It tasted just like all soda water with lime. Not that I need it to be a martini, but it might have had a splash of vodka in it. So I said, John, this drink tastes like it has no vodka in it. And he said, just get a shot and mix it yourself. So each drink was being counted as a double. So I would get a vodka tonic and then I would pour a shot into it. So that would come as 2. Frankly, it just felt like a regular cocktail. It was just a really weak pour, so I asked for a shot. So for my taste, it just tasted like that's the normal strength of what a drink should be. So I had maybe 2 or 3 that are being counted as 4 and 6. And I don't know. I felt fine. I felt like I was buzzed. And then there was one drink, the last one that was given to me, which I would have counted as 3, but they're counting as my 6th cocktail. The guys that we were with brought around shots, and they gave me one that I didn't drink, but I poured it in my drink. So that's now my 5th and 6th drinks, with the 7th, which is a shot that all the men did, and I poured it. So that one glass that I'm holding, that I go into the waterfall with, has 3 drinks in it, a vodka tonic and 2 shots. And which is why John said to me, you're not leaving that drink here, like you haven't touched it and just poured a bunch of vodka. He's like, just take it with you, which was something he always did. So then I go into waterfall and I put that drink down and I socialize most of the time.
So that would have been my 5th, 6th, and 7th drinks. Then John orders me a drink at the waterfall that I don't drink, that he takes with him. And then there was a round of shots that Chris Howard bought that I did take. So that would have been the night. But I did not consume 9 vodka martinis or take 9 shots, depending on how you count it. And the last 2 drinks, I didn't touch. I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I mean, I had drank, so, and that led me to question, like, could I have hit him? Did I run over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him? I mean, I always drive with my music blasting ever since I was 16. And I know when John got out of the car to go into Fairview, I know my car was blasting because when I got in it the next morning to go look for him, I had to immediately turn it down. And I don't know, it's stormy. I have had a few cocktails. I didn't black out, but I wasn't as lucid as I would have been if I had gone to bed at 9 and drank a tea. But so I was fuzzier than I would have been if I had had no alcohol.
How did you feel after that many drinks? When you got in the car, did you feel like you could drive? And did you feel
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway. I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet. The roads were very quiet. You can see it on the videos. And I was going, you know, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always drive extra slow. So I know my alerts aren't as sharp as they should be. But I shouldn't have been driving. But I don't think I was driving. I know I wasn't driving recklessly. I mean, I got plenty of video of myself driving all over the place. I put my car in John's garage, which is incredibly narrow, and I had a very oversized SUV. You see me, there's a video of me driving through the intersection when we leave Waterfall to go to Brian Albert's, and I was always taught by my father, even when you have a green light, you always should tap the brake. You don't know who's going to run red. And I see me doing that multiple times between 12 and 1 and 5 and 6 a.m. So I know I was driving safely, not as safely or as alert as I would be if I had no alcohol. But I was not driving recklessly by any measure.
Wow. Okay. Nima, like you watch all those next to each other, what are you taking away from that? As a human, what are you thinking right now about Karen Read?
I think that she was severely under the influence of alcohol. And Eklund talked about it. You know, these Bostonians, they're built different. I lived there. I went to Harvard. You know, we haven't mentioned it yet on the show. But when I lived there was a dozen bars, you know, within eyesight of my apartment. They can drink, Vinny. I'm a vodka drinker too. Karen Read's half my size. I'm sure she could drink me under the table. But for her to say that she can drive in a blizzard as long as she's not driving on the expressway after 9 vodka drinks, I think this is great for the Commonwealth if they're arguing vehicular manslaughter, right? She's driving with her music blasting. She's saying she's not lucid. She's fuzzy. This would be a great manslaughter case, but not a good murder one, Vinny.
Eklund, you listen to her describe the drinks. Like, I was trying to do the math, like 3 is 6. It's a double, but it wasn't a double. It was light, so I put a shot in it, and then I put it in that glass, and then Chris Albert brought us around, and then I gave it to John. It's tough to keep track of it. I mean, to me, for me, the takeaway was she was drinking that night. She was absolutely drinking, and like drinking that night. Not like a casual drink, but drinking. What'd you take away from it?
But here's the thing. I think, again, girl math is real. And then we have Boston girl math, completely different. But also, you have her boyfriend's a cop. She's going to a house full of cops. I'm thinking that, hey, if at any point I'm not safe enough to do anything, maybe the cops or the people adjacent to police officers would tell me no. Well,
they were drinking and driving too, so let's not misrepresent the night. They all were drinking and driving.
You cannot pick and choose when he's law enforcement. He was a law enforcement officer at that time as well. And so if he saw it, he's giving her drinks, saying, go and drive. These things are things that he did, that he condoned. We don't have evidence of him saying, no, don't do it. We do have evidence of him saying party on. So with that being said, she can have a little faith in her boyfriend to let her know, maybe not. But we have testimony saying like, here, the officer who's going to another officer's house, here's another shot. So that's what I'm seeing. So that's, if I'm that's what I see.
Kirk, I think where the prosecution is going on this with the second degree is that the alcohol is fueling the rage from the ongoing fight that they were having all day, and it came to a boil when they pulled in front of 34 Fairview. I think that's what they're going to argue.
Yeah, first of all, Vinny, I got to say Boston's taking a hit. I love Boston. I love Fenway. Hey, I'm on board with you guys. But listen, I think you're right, Vinny, because when we take these text messages and we take the whole story, we saw the friend testify. There was questions about jealousy, etc. Right, we're getting into this idea that there was a drunken rage involved here, this relationship. She'd had enough. In her drunken rage, she decides to reverse and hit John. And that's ultimately the picture that the Commonwealth is trying to portray. Whether it'll hold up, I don't know. But this talking about her drinks, I kind of have the same takeaway. You can't keep up with the math, but you do know that one thing that it adds up to is this woman was intoxicated, period.
All right, I just want you to give me a number. Just give me a number, 0 to 10, the chances of her testifying based upon the fact that all these clips are coming in, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch more that are coming in. And I'll begin with you, Nima.
2.
2. Eklund.
0.
0? Mm-hmm. Kirk.
I'm going 7. She was outside the courthouse saying, bring it to me. That tells me she wants to get up there. She's angry. She wants to get up there.
You didn't give me a number, but that's okay.
7.
7? Oh, you did say 7. I must have missed it. My fault. Yeah. My fault. I missed it. Okay. Great job tonight. Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nerman, Nima Rahmani. Great to have you on the program. Thanks so much. When we come back, I'll reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the tragic murder of Madeline Soto. Now her alleged killer and sex abuser, Stephen Stearns, has a brand new look since being incarcerated. Will it help him at trial? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
Is Karen Reed a killer girlfriend?
She's guilty.
Or the scapegoat in an elaborate cover-up?
Karen Reed was framed! We know who did it.
The Karen Reed Murder Retrial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. And there's a new Hulu series based upon the Alec Murdaugh murders and all that family drama. It's all based upon the Murdaugh Murders podcast, which was done by journalist Mandy Matney. Let me show you some of the casting for the show. There's Mandy Matney. It's based upon her work, and Brittany Snow will be playing Mandy in the series. Maggie Murdaugh will be played by Patricia Arquette. You saw her in Severance just recently. And who will be Alec Murdaugh, the murderer? Jason Clarke. And yeah, they change his hair, and trust me, looks just like him. So keep your eyes open. They're filming right now, actually pretty close to Court TV. All right, before we go, we have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Jazlynn Ruth's story. Just 15 years old, missing from Pueblo, Colorado since April 23rd. Here's what you need to do. If you see Jazlynn, please take a look at her photo. If you see her, make a call, make a difference. 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Pueblo Police Department in Colorado. That number's on our screen right now. Let's see if we can get Jazlynn to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget,
to hug the kids.